A retail empire that once controlled household names like Argos, Homebase, Burberry, and Next, built across 3 generations of a single family, eventually had to be broken apart and sold off piece by piece. The Wolfson family's great Universal Stores was not destroyed by a single catastrophe. It was undone by the very expansion strategy that made it dominant in the first place. This is the pattern that keeps repeating across retail history. A company finds a model that works, expands aggressively to capture more market, and then discovers that growth itself has become the structural weakness. The fatal mistake is not ambition. It is the failure to recognize when expansion shifts from building strength to distributing fragility across too many fronts. Great Universal Stores began as a mail-order business in the early 20th century. Sir Isaac Wolfson took control and transformed it into one of Britain's largest retail conglomerates. The model was straightforward. Purchase goods in bulk from manufacturers, distribute them through catalogs, and later through physical retail locations, and offer consumer credit to make purchasing easier. In an era when access to goods was still limited for much of the British public, this combination of selection, convenience, and credit was genuinely powerful. The breakthrough was vertical integration of retail and financial services. GUS did not just sell products, it extended credit to customers, which meant it captured profit on both the sale and the financing. This dual revenue stream funded further expansion. The company could acquire new retail brands, enter new product categories, and build infrastructure that smaller competitors could not match. Each acquisition fed the credit business, and the credit business funded more acquisitions. The growth flywheel accelerated across decades. The Wolfson family expanded GUS into a sprawling portfolio. Argos became a high street catalog retailer. Homebase served the home improvement market. The family's influence extended into fashion retail through connections to Burberry and Next. Meanwhile, the credit and data side of the business grew into what would eventually become Experian, one of the world's largest credit reporting agencies. At its peak, GUS was not merely a retailer, it was a conglomerate spanning consumer goods, home improvement, luxury fashion, and financial data services. But here is where the hidden crack was already forming. A conglomerate that spans catalog retail, brick-and-mortar home improvement, luxury fashion, and credit data is not actually one business with synergies. It is multiple businesses with fundamentally different competitive dynamics, different customer bases, different capital requirements, and different vulnerability profiles. The retail arms needed constant reinvestment in store formats, supply chains, and customer experience. The credit data business operated on entirely different economics, with high margins and relatively low capital intensity. Managing both under one roof meant capital allocation decisions were perpetually compromised. The structural weakness was diversification without coherence. Each arm of the empire faced its own competitive pressures, but they shared a single balance sheet and a single management team that had to make choices about where to invest. When the retail environment began shifting, first toward out-of-town superstores and then toward e-commerce, the conglomerate structure made it nearly impossible to respond with the speed and focus that each business needed independently. The decisions made under these constraints followed a pattern common to overexpanded retail empires. Rather than choosing which businesses to invest in deeply and which to exit early, management attempted to sustain the entire portfolio. Resources that might have transformed Argos into an early e-commerce leader were spread across maintaining Homebase stores, supporting catalog operations, and managing the increasingly valuable but operationally distinct credit data business. Every pound allocated to one division was a pound unavailable to another division facing its own existential competitive threat. The unraveling was not sudden. It was the slow recognition that the parts were worth more separated than combined, and that the combined structure was actually destroying value by preventing each business from competing effectively in its own market. Retail in Britain was transforming rapidly. Specialist competitors with focused strategies were outperforming diversified conglomerates in every category. A focused home improvement chain could invest entirely in that format. A focused online retailer could build logistics without subsidizing physical stores. GUS, trying to be everything, was becoming competitive in nothing. The outcome was Demerger. GUS was eventually broken apart. The retail operations were separated into Home Retail Group, which contained Argos and Homebase. The credit data business became Experian, listed independently. The logic was explicit. These businesses had no operational reason to remain together, and separating them would allow each to pursue its own strategy with dedicated capital and focused management. But Demerger did not save the retail side. Home Retail Group inherited the fundamental challenge that had been building for years. Argos and Homebase needed massive investment to compete in a market being reshaped by Amazon, by focused DIY competitors, and by changing consumer behavior. The years spent inside a conglomerate, competing internally for capital, had left them underinvested relative to their standalone competitors. The structural damage of overexpansion had already been done. Eventually, Argos was acquired by Sainsbury's, and Homebase was sold separately. Its store count subsequently reduced dramatically. Experian, meanwhile, thrived as an independent company. Freed from the conglomerate, it could invest entirely in data services, technology, and global expansion. The same business that had been one division among many became a focused, high-growth enterprise worth more alone than it had contributed to the combined group. This contrast illustrates the core mechanism. The problem was never that GUS owned bad businesses. It was that combining fundamentally different businesses under one roof prevented any of them from reaching their potential. The aftermath reshaped British retail. The Wolfson family's philanthropic legacy continued through the Wolfson Foundation, but the integrated retail empire they built no longer existed as a single entity. The brands survived in various forms under different owners, but the conglomerate model that had once seemed to represent strength through diversification had proven to be a source of weakness through dilution. The lesson here is precise and mechanical, not motivational. Retail expansion becomes fatal when it crosses the threshold from reinforcing a company's competitive position to fragmenting its ability to compete. Every acquisition, every new format, every adjacent market entry adds not just revenue potential, but also management complexity, capital competition, and strategic incoherence. The fatal mistake retailers keep making is not that they expand, it is that they treat expansion as inherently value-creating without recognizing that each new front demands focused resources and creates internal competition for attention. The pattern repeats because the early stages of expansion genuinely do create value. The flywheel works, revenue grows, the empire looks stronger, but underneath, the structure is becoming more brittle with each addition. And the moment the competitive environment demands rapid, focused response, the conglomerate discovers it cannot move quickly enough in any single direction. GUS is not unique. It is a case study in a mechanism that has claimed retail empires repeatedly. The companies that survive long-term in retail tend to be those that expand depth before breadth, that maintain coherence in their portfolio, and that recognize demerger or divestiture not as failure but as strategic discipline. The ones that collapse are almost always those that mistook scale for strength and discovered too late that an empire spread across too many fronts is not an empire at all. It is a collection of underfunded businesses waiting to be outcompeted one by one.